This hour, however, we are welcoming into the studio Dave Moore, who is president of the American Indian Bible College. And I asked Mr. Moore before we got started if he expected to end up on the front page of the Arizona Republic. You wrote a letter to NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue.
That's correct, Jamie, and sent a copy of it to the Arizona Republic, and I thought maybe a part of it will appear on the editorial page as a letter to the editor or something, and then come to find out it's on the front page of the paper, so it was quite a surprise.
Now, tell us about the letter. What did you say to Commissioner Tagliabue, and what did you ask of him?
Well, I'd been concerned for some time about issues related to American Indians, and I wrote some publications for our school a couple years ago about the Redskins and the Chiefs and that type of thing. But with the Martin Luther King holiday upon us and the request that the Super Bowl be canceled in the state of Arizona, I thought, well, I'll just send a letter to the NFL and express my concerns about the American Indians, because if they're so concerned about ethnicity, what about the Redskins? That seems to be somewhat of an insensitive name of a professional team. I don't believe they would name another team after the color of skin of some other ethnic group.
And so you said, as long as you're paying attention to racism, how about looking at this one that's been around for a very long time?
Exactly, and especially in light of the fact that the population, the state Indian population, is twice that of the black population in Arizona. Yet no comments have been made about issues related to American Indians.
Interesting how that works, huh?
Right.
Now, how long ago did you send the letter?
I think I wrote the letter December the 20th.
And have you heard back from the NFL?
No, I haven't.
Not a word from them?
I haven't heard anything from them.
Were you surprised to see this front page article today?
Oh, certainly, I was surprised.
Did they contact you, the newspaper contact you, and ask for additional comment?
Well, yes, I was contacted yesterday, and the author of the article indicated it might appear in the paper today, it might be a few days later, and then she called and said it looks like it's going to be on A1. So the first thing I did this morning is go out and get the newspaper.
And having your name behind this letter to the commissioner of the NFL on the front page of our newspaper, is it a satisfying response to the issue that you've raised, or?
Well, I think it brought a lot more attention to it than I ever thought would be brought. I had talked to some of our students, Indian students, before, and asked them what they thought about things like Redskins. And they said it offended them, and they didn't like it. But you see, the Indian population in the Southwest are kind of passive and traditional. Most of our students at American Indian Bible College, for example, come from homes where their parents or grandparents do not even speak English. And so when they go home to communicate with them, they have to go back to their other language. Well, it's when you've lived on a reservation as I have, when you understand the dynamic of American Indian culture and values, you can understand why it is difficult for them to be able to articulate their views and their concerns about these things.
And so you took it then as your job?
I thought, well, someone's perhaps needs to say something, and even though this is out of the context of what I normally do and what I'm normally involved in, I thought I will go ahead and express it and see what happens.
Has your phone been ringing a lot today?
Sure has.
We're joined by phone. The man who does color for the Washington Redskins broadcast, Sam Huff, is here with us on KTAR 620. And Sam, have you heard about the story that we're discussing with Dave Moore?
No, but I think everybody's against anything, and now I just knowing the Redskins I do, and I played for the Redskins. I think it's a great honor because Joe Gibbs is such a wonderful coach, a great organization, and I think if anything, it is a symbol of freedom, a symbol of the Indian, and it's almost like a trademark for them. It's not degrading in any way, shape, or form as I see it. I don't know. Maybe I'm from West Virginia, and their nickname is Mountaineers, and I always felt very proud about that. I mean, I'm a proud person. I look for the good things, not the bad.
Dave, what do you know, Sam does color now for the Redskins broadcast, used to play for the team, right, Sam?
Yes.
Okay. He has no problem with it.
Boy, Sam, I tell you, I enjoyed watching you and listening to you when you played, one of the great linebackers, I recall.
And honestly,
well, Sam, let me make a comment if I could.
Okay.
I know there are teams called the Chiefs in the NFL. There are other teams in professional sports named after Indian mascots and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd just like to ask you this question. What would your view be if a new franchise wanted to come into the NFL and name themselves the Blackskins or the Yellowskins? How would you react to that? How would you feel about that?
Well, I'm white. It would, I would think.
Would you consider that would be an honor to that ethnic group?
I can't see that it would be an honor. No, I don't know.
Didn't you just say that the Redskins should be an honor to the American Indians?
Well, it brings attention to them. Yes, I agree.
Well, it certainly brings attention to them.
But it's not bad attention, is it?
What about Yellowskins? Would that be bad attention?
I don't know.
Well,
you're bringing up some points that I never even thought about.
Have you ever talked to any American Indians about this? How
No.
they would feel about it?
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure that anybody ever has. But I mean,
no, I can understand why you might not feel there's any concern about it, because you haven't lived the life of the American Indians and you don't understand the abuse that they've received over the years, and now so much attention being drawn to ethnicity, other ethnic groups, and here again they're left out in the cold with no one to speak on their behalf.
Well, you see, the majority of people in the world, I guess, other than seeing cowboys and Indians and things in movies without being to the reservations, and I have been in Arizona, and you don't understand or even know the Indians' problems, and I'm sure they do have problems.
Has not our society advanced to the point where we have escaped the concept of stereotyping ethnic groups? Why did the Stanford University change the name of their mascot from Indians to Cardinal a few years ago? Because of their concern for the insensitivity of how that would affect American Indians. And to me, the word Indians isn't even as offensive as Redskins would be.
Did it change anything one iota, the fact that they did that?
What do you mean, did it change anything? You changed the name of their team.
It didn't make the Indians' life any better or any worse. It just, I guess it honored the Indians, their wishes, if they wanted them to change, and they did, I guess.
Sam, let me suggest something to you here, and I appreciate you being willing to banty this about a bit with Dave Moore. But suppose somebody came along and decided that they wanted to start a football team called the Honkies.
The what?
The Honkies.
I guess that's a degrading. Is that what? I don't
considered,
even know.
It's the best that I can do at this moment, since our society, as you well know, is mostly white Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah.
There aren't too many monikers widely known that put down white people that are meant as a shorthand term of reference, with just a little bit of a cutting edge to it. Well, Redskins was that, and it hails from a time when we were taking over the country and herding people onto reservations, and we referred to them not as other human beings, but as this group of animals called Redskins. And so there's a little insensitivity about it historically. And I think that it's hard for folks like you and I to realize that there are names that draw blood.
I guess if you're, maybe the Cowboys, whoever's Cowboys, don't like to be called the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know. I mean,
well, I think there's a line. I think there's a little line you have to draw there, Sam. I mean, when you're talking about names like Vikings or Cowboys, that's one thing. But when you're talking about Redskins, would you think it would be let me ask you again, to have a team called the Blackskins?
No, I would not.
Then why Redskins?
Because I guess it's just always been that way since the beginning. I mean, here's what I would do.
So it's okay because it's always been that way?
As long back as I can remember.
Would that mean that we should go back to slavery today because it was always that way until a certain point? I don't
mean to be offensive, but I really don't. In your case, if I was you, what I would do, and I think if anybody would ever make a move on it, or maybe even consider change, would be the owner of the Washington Redskins himself, and that's Jack Kent Cooke. He's a very, if anybody would be very sensitive to those issues, he would be. I would write him a letter. I would get in touch with Mr. Cooke, and if it's that big an issue with the Indians, I would certainly take every avenue to have it stamped out.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate you joining us very much.
My pleasure. I don't know if I've added anything or not, but I hope so.
You've done a great job. I
Thank you.
appreciate you for taking it up with Dave Moore here. We're going to take a quick time out, and we'll return with Dave Moore, who is president of the American Indian Bible College, written a letter to Paul Tagliabue saying, listen, as long as you're paying attention to ethnic concerns, why does the NFL have a team called the Redskins? We'll give you an opportunity to speak to that when we return at 277-5827 on KTAR 620 AM News Talk Radio. On KTAR 620 AM News Talk Radio, Jamie McFerrin in for the vacationing Michael Dixon, and our guest this hour, Dave Moore, president of the American Indian Bible College. Mike calling from Phoenix on KTAR 620. Good afternoon, Mike.
Yeah, hi. I had one question, and then let him give his piece. Is I don't see how the team Washington Redskins could be so...
I need you to speak up, Mike. We can hardly hear you.
Okay, I don't see how they can be so racially prejudiced, or whatever you want to call it, towards the American Indian. For one reason, their prejudice in that club, I doubt, even exists. 80% of their team are just black, okay?
So how then do you justify, Dave, the concern about the name, the Washington Redskins, with the fact that there are minority players who do quite well on the Redskins team?
Yeah, in fact, one minority player who was one of the greatest players to ever play the game was Jim Thorpe, who was an American Indian.
Right.
I think I would probably want to ask Mike, though, the question. The Redskins have so many blacks on their team, which is true. But if they're sensitive about the issues of blacks, which they should be, I don't have any problem with that, why would they be insensitive about another ethnic group?
Something to think about, Mike. Thank you for your call. Let's talk to Edith in Phoenix on KTAR 620. Good afternoon, Edith.
Yes, I fully agree with this gentleman who's speaking. And I also think he should pursue it further. Just like the young man who called before, it was so ridiculous that you couldn't see the fact that he would not want black skins nor yellow skins, but it's perfectly all right to have red skins. That doesn't add up. If it's derogatory to one group, then it's bound to be to another, even though his generation or he doesn't see it that way. Looking from the viewpoint of the Indian, it's bound to be that way. And while he's at it, I was horrified to see where Squaw Pete got its name. And although it's a landmark, if I ever saw or read anything that was so derogatory to a race, that name should be changed. And I commend this gentleman for the fact that he's just bringing it up. And during the time of the Martin Luther King controversy and the scholarship, there was a man with whom I worked that was black, and he came in laughingly and made the remark that the squeaking wheel gets oil. And I think there are other ethnic groups that need to squeak a little, and I commend this gentleman.
Edith, thank you for your call. 277-5827 is our phone number. We have Mike from Scottsdale joining us now on KTAR 620. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Jamie, and I'm Mr. Moore. How are you doing?
Just fine.
Listen, we talked today about this, and we went on a runaround. I'm on your side. I think you have a very valid point. I'm in my mid-30s, and every time I heard a sentence with the word redskin in it, it was always ended in a derogatory statement like those thieving redskins or those dirty, no good, so-and-so redskins. It was a very derogatory term, and I'm truly amazed that people say, well, I never think of it that way. It's like, I don't know if I should say it, but the N-word when you talk about Afro-Americans. It was never, ever a proud honor to be called that. It was always derogatory. And to have somebody say, well, the Redskins are a badge of honor. First of all, the Redskins, that was a white man's name. The Redskins never called each other that. It was funny. But more importantly, what I think people are missing here, and the lady just previous touched on it, it seems only certain groups, when, quote-unquote, they have their squeaky wheel, they're the only ones that get noticed and things changed. Everybody else, the mix, whether you're an Oriental or you're even Hispanics to some extent, will not get the due that they're, quote-unquote, due because they are not organized as much, and I'm glad to see that you are organizing them. And then what I'd like to find out is there any way the general public could, maybe have a letter writing campaign or anything like that to help you out? Because I think society is changing, but very slowly, and I think racism is still alive and well. And I think you are one of the vanguard, and I think people need to understand that these things are old, holdover traditions that aren't acceptable anymore. Is there anything we can do to help?
Well, I'm not riding a horse on this issue. I guess, pardon the expression. But I've been involved with American Indians for almost 20 years now, lived on a reservation, and I think I understand a little bit of the sensitivity that they have. I can remember living on the White Mountain Apache Reservation during the Vietnam War era, when we would have license plates, bumper stickers that would say, "America, love it or leave it." And I would see little stickers on the back of their pickup trucks that said, "America, love it or give it back." And I think that was somewhat their way of trying to express something that a lot of us were missing. These people have contributed over 1/2 of the world's food supply that is used today, in the sense that they first domesticated crops like corn, potatoes, beans, squash. A lot of our medicine we use today, we owe to American Indians who use these plants in their medicine, and I just don't think they get their just.
We'll be back with Dave Moore and hear more about this on KTAR 620. Our guest this hour, Dr. Dave Moore, president of the American Indian Bible College, wrote a letter to NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue and said, listen, as long as you're so concerned about ethnicity with regard to the Martin Luther King holiday and the threat to pull the Super Bowl from Phoenix, how about taking a look at this team called the Washington Redskins? The name is racist. Did you use that word, by the way, in the letter?
Well, I didn't say the name was racist, but I said if he was concerned about racial issues and concerned about the NFL's image of not being racist, then he might consider the connotation of the Redskins. That's how I expressed it.
What was your intent in writing this letter?
Well, certainly didn't expect it to open up the issue as much as it has here in this state. But I guess I was just speaking out of a little bit of frustration. We hear about all these other groups. We have twice the population of American Indians in this state as we do blacks. Will somebody listen? Will somebody pay some attention to these original inhabitants of our nation?
But we've heard a couple of times intimations that it's always been this way. I mean, it's always been the Washington Redskins.
Well, that's what Sam Huff said.
Yeah, they're not complaining. We don't hear Native Americans en masse standing up and saying this is a derogatory statement. Now, there was a quote in the morning paper from the education official in Window Rock that the name is offensive and derogatory and totally unintelligent. Concern about the mascot, the stereotypical Indian mascot for the Washington Redskins team as being derogatory. But you wrote this letter just because you were frustrated? You didn't really expect anything to happen?
No, I really didn't, to be honest with you. But you raise a point, though. I think it's difficult for Native Americans to speak out articulately on issues such as this because they are pretty much confined to reservations. Those who do not live on reservations certainly live in city areas and other places, but they don't have the forces marshaled. They don't have the organizations that other ethnic groups have. They don't have the tradition and the background that others. They were here before we were. Their traditions and history are not Western in nature. A lot of their tradition relates to intuition rather than scientific concept of study and method of research and evaluation. And they feel like that if anybody speaks out and rises above the group, then they're drawing attention to themselves, and therefore they're considered a deviant in the group. Whereas in our society, someone is considered to be really doing well if he sticks out from the group and he makes a name for himself. To them, you don't want to do that because you're elevating the individual over the group, and group identity is more important to them than individual identity. Did you want to make a name for yourself with this letter? That's good. No, I didn't. Like I said, I just wanted to point something out and say, hey, this is an apparent contradiction that the NFL has recommended to move the Super Bowl out of the state because of a civil rights issue, yet they got one of their own teams named after the skin color of a group, and that appears to be so contradictory to me. So I said, I just wanted to say to them, don't you think it's contradictory?
Let's talk to Ron in Phoenix on KTAR 620. Good afternoon, Ron.
Thanks. Hi, Jamie and David.
Hi, Ron.
Yeah, we have a Indian school road. I've often wondered how it would be tolerated if it were called Mexican School Road or Negro School Road. I don't think it would be tolerated at all. What I wanted to ask you, David, is what response have you gotten from Tagliabue regarding the changing of the Redskins' name? Any response?
No, I haven't heard anything from Tagliabue or anyone in the NFL offices.
Okay, I suggested it'd probably be something along the traditional lines of saying it's always been a tradition, so they're going to keep it that way. So I would ask him to, why doesn't he respect our traditional democratic voting system here in Arizona?
Well, that's probably a good question.
It's sure been around a lot longer than Redskins. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. College wrote a letter to NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue and said if the NFL were really motivated by ethnic concerns, why would they have a team called the Redskins? Ethnic concerns obviously raised in the wake of the controversy over the lack of a Martin Luther King holiday here in the state of Arizona. And if, in fact, the NFL is willing to threaten to take away the Super Bowl in '93 from us because we rejected as voters a paid MLK holiday, why not take just a minute to consider the implications of a team named the Redskins? So asked Dave Moore of Paul Tagliabue. So far, no formal response.
That's correct.
We should let our listeners know here on KTAR 620 that we did place several calls to the NFL offices today, and they refused to come on the air with us. No one was available at the Washington Post. We did try there. We heard earlier from the Washington Redskins color commentator Sam Huff, who says, but it's always been this way. It's a badge of honor. It's bravery. It's strength. It's courage. Why would there be a problem with it? Well, that's what we're discussing here this hour. We have a lot of folks who've been waiting a very long time to speak with you. Among them, John in Phoenix on KTAR 620. John, thanks for your patience.
Yes. First of all, I appreciate Dr. Moore bringing this to the forefront. I believe there are problems, and the problems with the Indians probably were caused by the whites. And also, I'm not a fan of Tagliabue. But having said that, when the Redskins beat the Browns, do I have any malice towards the Indians? And who are the Browns? Or, Cincinnati Reds, who are the Reds? We're talking about Russians, we talk about Indians. So, a while ago, or years ago, the Negroes decided they wanted to be called blacks. And yet, I'm a white, but is my skin color really white? Is the Indian skin color really red? So having said all that, if 1,000 people or a whole country calls me a nerd, if I know I'm cool, then I'm cool. I don't care what 1,000 people call me. So I think it's a matter of self-esteem. So my final thing is that the problem seems to be greater than a team name. And but on the other hand, having said all that, if you could make Tagliabue do a turnabout, then I'm for him. Okay? So.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your comments. He's really hinting at something there, Dr. Moore, and that is if you're secure in yourself, if you are balanced and you live a life that you can be proud of, that's something that we're taught from early on. Isn't that really what matters? Not this idea of what somebody else calls you?
Well, I suppose that's true, but I don't think anyone likes to be called something that they feel to be derogatory. I mean, if we carry that argument out to its logical end, that means you can call anybody any name you want to call them, and it shouldn't offend anybody. We're all sensitive people, though.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, let's talk with Ken in Mesa on KTAR 620. What do you say, Ken?
I say that I think the good doctor has got a problem because a lot of these teams were named the Reds and so on and so forth in respect to Thorpe back when he broke all kinds of records. and now they're being run down for the same reasons. And but they named.
Well, why don't we name some team the Blackskins then, out of respect for, say, Jim Brown?
It might be very possible.
I really don't think so. I don't think that would fly. Do you?
Well, on the other hand, when Jim Thorpe, that was a break in an awful lot of he was the first Indian to really break through everything. And then we had baseball teams, we had football teams, we had everything jump on the bandwagon and in respect to him and say, that we will name our teams after you or whatever, But on the other hand, I spent 15 years selling product to the Indian reservations and working with the Indians to train the Indians to how to do stucco, how to do drywall, this type of thing. They had some real problems with themselves.
Maybe stucco and drywall was not important to them. And maybe they didn't see the importance of it within their value system like we do.
No, they're trying to train their people. And they're buying the product, they're wanting to learn how to do it, they're wanting to learn how to apply the product and everything else, and they can't even understand their own people out. They can't understand why they have people on their own reservations that seem to have a contest with one another.
But that's really off the topic of our conversation here today, Ken.
No, I don't think so. I'm saying that here we got a white man. He might be involved with the church or anything else, but people at one time were respecting an Indian that did his job out there, and in respect to him, named their teams with his race.
Do you think
now we're being run down for it?
Let me just ask you, John, one question. Do you think it would be a respect, say, for example, to the Chinese race in San Francisco if they named their teams the Yellowskins instead of the 49ers?
They want to be called the Yellowskins?
I mean, do you think that would be respectful to the Chinese population there?
If they want to be called Yellowskins.
He's not going to answer your question.
No.
Ken is not going to answer the question, I promise you. 277-5827 is our phone number. Sue in Gilbert with us here on KTAR 620. Good afternoon.
Hello. I just want to commend Dr. Moore for what he has done. I think he has given a lot of people, the listeners, a lot of information that maybe they weren't aware of that is going on the reservations and everything, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs and everything. And I'm glad that he wrote the letter. And I'm sorry that he's going to get backlash, that he's going to but having come from my family, my great-grandmother was an Indian, and my great-grandfather was...
what tribe?
Well, he was from the southern part of... my great-grandmother was from the southern part of Illinois and Indiana, right there on the Wabash River. And there was two tribes. I don't have it written in front of me, so I can't rattle off names right now. But my great-grandfather, he was a sharecropper, and he came up from south of the border. So actually, I don't know how he got his legal papers and everything, but actually he was enslaved by, one farm to another farm would just they'd hire out to these people, and that's how they made their money. And from a lot of the back in the Midwest.
Okay, but Sue, now wait a minute. Again, I want to do with you as I did with Ken. That's really taking our conversation way afield. We're talking about whether or not the name, the Washington Redskins, is unintelligent, is derogatory, is offensive enough to warrant a change on the part of the NFL. Now, listen, the NFL has told us they're going to pull the 1993 Super Bowl from here.
I understand that, and I think they are wrong. And if they're not going to have my point has been ever since we rejected the King holiday. What about an American Indian Day? I said that from day one, and I know a lot of people look at, well, what do you mean? The American Indians are recognized. From my way of seeing it, no, they're not. They never have been.
All right, dear, thank you for your call.
Mm-hmm.
We'll return with Dr. Dave Moore of the American Indian Bible College on KTAR 620 AM, News Talk Radio. Dr. Dave Moore, president of the American Indian Bible College. Yesterday, Sam Steiger did an editorial here on KTAR about the USDA extension specialist who took it upon himself to suggest that the name of a 4-H club, the Desert Herdsmen, was sexist and not to be changed, despite the fact that there were 31 boys and 30 girls, I believe, in the organization, and created quite a hoo-ha about it. How is that different, or how is what you have done different from what this lone bureaucrat, as Sam referred to him, has done?
Well, it's probably not different, only in the to the extent that we're talking about an ethnic group here, rather than a sex. Otherwise, I think the concept is identical, isn't it, Jamie?
I don't know.
What would you call them, the herdspersons?
The herdspersons, exactly. I listened to Sam yesterday, and I found myself kind of sharing his frustration that we've come so far, and yet we still leave so many things unresolved.
Oh, certainly. I hear a lot of comments about our boys over in Saudi Arabia, and we tend to forget sometimes that a lot of those the military personnel over there are not of the male sex. We have a lot of women in the country as well.
Yes, and in fact, my 20-year-old niece is now deployable, so it is our young people over there for me. But again, I come back to something that I touched on earlier with you, is that if you're secure, people, there was a period of time when I would get offended when somebody would call me a girl. Well, I'm not offended by that anymore. It is really not my problem that someone cannot perceive me as a full-grown woman at nearly 40 years of age. And I'm just not offended. Now, there are some who use the word deliberately to offend, and I will respond to that. But, am I then insensitive to other women because I don't say to someone who calls me a girl, knock it off and how dare you?
Well, I think obviously individuals develop with their self-esteem. They can become callous to supposedly derogatory comments, but I think what we're talking about here is not an individual comment, but not an individual problem, but a societal problem, a societal contradiction. We can make so much currency out of issues for larger ethnic groups, for example, even to the point of recommending a cancellation of a major athletic event within the state, and evidently even the NBA All-Star team being moved and so on. I understand that black athletes make up a majority of professional sports teams, and I'm sensitive to that, and I'm not opposed to the Martin Luther King holiday, but so much currency can be made of something like that in our society in addressing the issue of civil rights. Yet, where are the American Indians? It just seems like a contradiction. I want to avoid using the word hypocrisy, because maybe it's a harsh term, but it seems so contradictory to talk about, let's not put the Super Bowl in Phoenix. Let's be careful about who we invite to the Fiesta Bowl and make sure we honor Martin Luther King and so on. And yet, here's a state that has twice the population of American Indians as they do blacks, and no concern about a team named Redskins or anything like that.
Let's talk with Darryl in Phoenix on KTAR 620. Hi, Darryl.
Hello. This is Darryl, and I'm a student at American Indian Bible College.
I need you to speak up so we can hear you, okay?
Hi, Darryl Noble. How you doing?
Hi, doing mighty fine. I must respectfully disagree with our president. Being American Indian, full blood from Oklahoma. Now, I think there's a distinction here when I've heard so far is this concept of people on the reservation and what have you. Back home in Oklahoma, the two top teams in the NFL favored by Indian people was the Dallas Cowboys because they're close to Oklahoma, and the Washington Redskins merely by the name Redskins. And there is no malice toward the name Redskins. As a matter of fact, our family often refers to other Indians as merely skins, and in a colloquial sense. And so we don't often feel this malice when we hear the name Washington Redskins or anything else. And as a matter of fact, many Indian people take pride in the Washington Redskins and enjoy their play.
How do you feel about their mascot?
Well, that's just, it goes with everything. Even at our Bible college, we are called the Warriors, and we go in with drums, we paint our faces at the college. And, and there's nothing wrong with it in that context, so why should there be anything wrong with it in Washington? And it brings the Indian people much joy watching the Redskins, having taken some pride in that they are being recognized.
Darryl, let me just ask you a question, okay?
Yes.
Do you see a contradiction between the stance of the National Football League in not wanting a Martin Luther King Day holiday in Arizona because of not wanting to offend the blacks and allowing a team to be named the Redskins? Do you see any contradiction in that?
Yeah, I see a contradiction, but I really can't see the call for the decline of calling them the Washington Redskins. Yes, I do see. I agree with you on that point, but I really don't see that we should call for the Washington Redskins to be called something else. Like I said, even back home in Oklahoma, we refer to other Indians as skins, and it's nothing that we get offended about.
Well, I can appreciate that, Darryl. Evidently, there are some other Native Americans, even at our college, who are disturbed about that, who've never said anything about it. But I've talked to some of them, Darryl, and some have different opinions on it. And, certainly there's not a unanimity of opinion.
We have to take a quick time out here, Darryl. Thank you very, very much for the call, and we'd like to hear from other Native Americans with your point of view on it for Dr. Dave Moore on KTAR 620 AM News Talk Radio. Back to the conversation with Dr. Dave Moore, president of the American Indian Bible College, on whether or not the Washington Redskins should change their name. They were going to change it to what?
To what?
To what?
Boy, I don't have a suggestion for that, Tammy.
Is there a way that... So you don't have a suggestion on what to change it to. Do you honestly believe it will be changed or should be changed?
Well, yes, I honestly think if they're going to make issues as they are and speak out about civil rights, then they ought to look in their own backyard. And I think it's contradictory not to do something about it if they're going to be so outspoken about ethnic awareness and consciousness.
Let's talk with Ed and Gilbert on KTAR 620. Thanks for holding, Ed. You're on KTAR.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Moore, as you stated, I've spent some time on the White River on Fort Apache Indian Reservation. First of all, I'd like to say that the Indians are proud of their race, and the only ones that I've ever seen that or talked to that get ashamed of being called a redskin, or they're ashamed of their race, and I don't think there's any Indian that really feels that way. But the other thing is, this stuff has got to stop. I agree with you about Taglaboo, that is, this race thing with Martin Luther King and everything and the names, but it's got to stop. A few years back, I took the chairman at that time of the White Mountain Apache tribe as a guest to a ASU football game. And he's a minister in his church and preaches, too. And
who are you talking about? Ronnie Lupe?
No, Reno Johnson.
Yeah, I know Reno Johnson.
Yes, sir. And Reno, the first thing he really laughed about, he says, here we are. He says, there's 70,000 people here. He says, I wish I could get this many to come to a service. He says, but here we are rooting for the devil. He says, cheering for the devil? So where's this going to stop? I mean, let's take the Apache chopper. It's a killing machine. Should we look at it and say, are they proud that it's named after them, or are they going to, hey, I don't want it named after me because all that machine's built for, that chopper's to kill. Martin Luther King, my objective to that is that I don't want a paid holiday. Nothing against the man. He did fine for his race. There's others that did fine. Chavez for his race, for the Hispanics. And so I don't know. What's your opinion of that?
Well, there are so many issues. This is just one issue that I have brought up. I can't solve all the problems or can't address all the issues, some of which you've touched upon. But I work with and have worked with and among American Indians for almost 20 years, so I can't help but feel a certain sentiment to them. And I do happen to know that there are significant numbers, some of which have called in already on this station, to express their feelings about it.
And we thank you for giving us a call on KTAR 620 AM News Talk Radio.